Morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Maria Veloso, and we are here today to talk about a very state-of-the-art topic. I am a strategic of scenario creator of ecosystem, and I love to think about the future of organizations. We have Andrea, Bruno, and Daniel, and we are going to have a very informal discussion about ESG+T and how they are transforming organizations. I would like to thank Rodrigo and Josia Villar for the invitation, for their dedication to put together such an ambitious event, one of the largest in Latin America. And it's really a pleasure to be here as the moderator of this dialogue. So let's start from some initial input. And I have one first question. Does technology transform man, or is it transform people who creates new technology? How can we understand that combination between transformation of society, climate change, and the advent and evolvement of technology is causing the metamorphosis of society and businesses? And understanding it all is essential for us to progress in the 21st century. We are going to fine-tune our understanding. Let's speak about the spirit of our era. It's year one of century 21, and we have to understand what is guiding the organization of the future. So let's start from the climate change, which is very much related with ESG. The Earth has been really moving, and the human actions have driven these transformations. All of that because of extreme use of resources and the emission of contaminants into the environment. So Houston, we have a problem. We really have to think differently. The most modern concept is related with planetary boundaries, the concept that our planet has limits, and these limits determine how we can evolve and progress from now on. And as this is an event focused to healthcare, I just would like to show 5 of the limits. So integrity of biosphere, the use of water, change of territories, atmospheric aerosol, and new contaminants. These are topics that really impact Earth and impact us. As such, we have to understand that ESG is no evolution, progression. It's just a way of measuring exactly where we are right now.
So the second thing is
society itself.
We're going through significant changes in society in terms of how we consume, in terms of the expectation of collaborators, in
relationship
terms of
with
the
partners,
relationship
clients,
with customers,
and voters
as well.
Including the
electorate,
need for
which
new
includes the
legislation
requirements for new laws, which affects everyone. We're going through a period where all of the visions in the world have come to a crisis, and people feel free to create everything from scratch. And we
go to
left
volatility.
The frivolity of the modern era.
We have to understand that.
We move towards something different. We have to understand the society concerning the time that we're now living in.
And we go from reason to affection, because affection creates urban tribes, groups, and it is be with. It's the feeling of belonging, of being part of a group. And finally, we have digital technology. With internet and all the internet, it is part of the virtual society. And it really drives the new technology that goes beyond time and space. And this has a very important role of knowledge and of the dynamic of innovation. And I apologize, I had a problem with the channels here. Now we are back on track. I'm sorry. It really is subject to pressure on organizational structure, creating a new relational dimension that really makes companies shift somewhat what they had been doing. And we have to understand the strategy as a complex system, that the new digital technology change the conditions, and digital social media are the new tribes, the new communities, and part of this complex architecture. In this new ecology, there are new opportunities coming into place. And this is why we have to navigate in this new era, not only to create strategies for our organizations, but also to create a positive impact. This is what it means to be sustainable. And this is what is expected of society, to keep on changing, to keep on evolving, understanding that for business to be sustainable, we have to go from producing wealth to bringing more well-being. Our corporate strategy has to be aligned with new challenges that are posed to us and interconnected with the multiplicity of factors and internal and external components. I think that the main obstacle for the development of a coherent plan towards a sustainable world is to address isolated issues, because you see, people want to deal with economy, environment, social, governance, technology, separated, but no, it's all together. ESG+T, together, interdependent, transdisciplinary, new time, new lenses, new approaches. What we see as a result of innovative companies is to help create communities which are more profitable and take a positive cycle to businesses, because we are creating business ecosystems which are stronger and more resilient. I would like now to hand it over to Andrea Bonime-Blanc. She created the term ESG+T, and she's going to tell us where this idea came from, and she's going to share her opinion with us. And right after her, I'm going to introduce all speakers. Welcome, please.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you, the whole organization, for having me here today. Excuse me. And I'd love to share with you a presentation that I put together with some visuals so you can see what I'm talking about. Sometimes visuals are better than words, as I learned many years ago. So if we could put the PowerPoint presentation up that I sent, that would be great. And then I can send you through it. So the next slide, please. So the ESG+T concept came along in my brain a few years ago as I was writing a book in which I was trying to create a reason, a rationale around the whole ESG conceptual setting that people have been developing, especially in Europe, more recently now in the US, and certainly in Latin America. And one thing that I felt was really missing was the idea of technology. While there are a few issues within the E, the S, and the G that could be considered technological, they really weren't treated as a separate important category. So if you go to the next slide, please, I'll share with you a typology that I put together for that book. And in that typology, if you go to the next slide, you will see a lot of things that you would consider normal and predictable under the environmental piece. If you go to the next slide, please. There's a typology of different kinds of issues, risks, and opportunities that you would find typically under environmental, such as climate change, carbon emissions, energy efficiency, hazardous waste, etc. Under social, human rights, health and safety, workplace conditions, under governance, corporate governance, business ethics, corruption, bribery. But there's a whole bunch of things under technology that are not really considered under ESG. And in my opinion, technology is not only driving a lot of ESG, but there's technology in each and every one of these environmental, social, and governance issues. Everything is intertwined, as Maria just said, interconnected. And so as we have this explosion of innovation, explosion of technology, there's also an explosion of new issues, of new risks, and of new opportunities. So if we go to the next slide, please, I'll explain a little bit why I think we're here. And it has to do with situational awareness. It has to do with historical context. And in my opinion, we have 5 what I call mega trends that have all converged at the same time over the last couple of years. And mega trends to me are multi-year events. These are not things that happen from one quarter to the next or from one year to the next. These are things that are moving along, not necessarily slowly, but forcefully and in very large context. And, as Maria mentioned a few minutes ago, there's this situation of, is man transforming technology or is technology transforming man? And in my humble opinion, it's certainly both, but I think technology is transforming us in ways that we don't even know. So I have one mega trend that's about tech disruption at the speed of light. So let's go to the next slide. I'll explain it briefly, and then I'll explain each of the other 5 mega trends. So next slide, please. This is basically megatrend number 1, which is tech disruption at the speed of light. And you can see a photography here of a warrior robot or killer robot, of robots at work, of facial recognition technology, of a police dog robot. These are all things that we've invented and that are affecting us in ways that I don't think we really understand. And that's where that interconnection with other parts of our lives takes place. So the governance piece of technology is extraordinarily important when we think about AI ethics, nanotechnology, biotech ethics. You're in the healthcare field. There are so many different things, aspects, whether it's algorithmic, whether it's biotech, whether it's DNA, genetic engineering. These are all things that are affecting us in ways that we do not know. Next slide, please. So the next slide will show you some of the upside, and there's so much upside, and that is why I call each one of these slides risk and opportunity. So in this technological innovation, the upside is limitless. Today, I just saw a new article in The Economist about 22 emerging technologies for 2022. And in it were a number of very important health innovations that are taking place, including virtual reality workouts, brain interfaces, 3D printed bone implants. And in this slide, you'll see a couple of other incredible opportunities. We all know about the vaccine development over the last year and a half against coronavirus, which has been unlike any vaccine development ever in history. And we have AI being used for geospatial recognition of trees in the middle of the desert in Africa. So this is an amazing upside opportunity, and hence what we're calling boosting innovation. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll share quickly my other 4 megatrends with you. The next one, next slide, please, is, one more good thing about technology. This is, for example, an initiative that the UN has undertaken for the last few years called Big Data for the Sustainable Development Goals. And every single one of these, and many of them are health related, many of them are anti-poverty, food, anti-hunger, good health and well-being. These are deployments of big data analytics and AI and machine learning on behalf of combating the SDGs, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. So megatrend number 2 is a serious issue that has been measured by the Edelman Trust Barometer over the last decade to 2 decades. And one of the serious things that we are all suffering from one way or another, whether it's in government, in business, in NGOs or in media is a decline in trust in leadership and institutions. And the only institution that seems to be eking out both being ethical to a certain extent and competent is business. Everyone else is underwater when it comes to competency, and NGOs are considered ethical but not terribly competent. So this is one of these opportunities, in my opinion, for leaders to take charge and do the right thing. It's a time when all of this is coming together, the need for change, the COP26 situation where we're all struggling to have global agreements on serious issues that affect health, that affect climate, that affect basically the survival of the earth. Next slide, please. And this is just a typology that I put together about leadership, which I wrote about in my book a couple of years ago. And it's basically a typology from irresponsible leader to enlightened leader when it comes to ESG plus technology issues in terms of what they're trying to do. The irresponsible and superficial leaders are exactly what they say. They don't care, or they're very much into greenwashing and just marketing of supposed ESG and technology concepts. It's the responsible and the enlightened leaders that actually put their money where their mouth is, create the programs and the risk management and the innovation procedures necessary to achieve the ESG goals and the technology goals. The enlightened leaders go a little further by really going into their products and services and creating what they say they're creating, whether it's green, whether it's environmentally friendly, whether it's socially conscious, whether it's got high governance standards. They actually do that. They create better products and services. Next slide, please. Megatrend number 3 is the rise of interconnected complex risk, and really the whole climate change, pandemic, the bursting of technology, the rise of socially conscious and social injustice issues around the world and within countries really proves how interconnected everything is. If you go to the next slide, please, I just have a real quick picture to show you all that shows the interconnected nature of the ESG+T issues related to the pandemic, starting with biological and deforestation issues that might have given rise to animals and humans becoming connected, and the virus skipping from animals to humans, then the pandemic spreading all over the world, giving rise and a lot of momentum to social justice issues, both in the US and in other countries and globally. The health and safety of workers became paramount. And it's also given rise to governance and technology issues that we haven't seen before. The ransomware in the healthcare industry, the cyber attacks have been enormous. That's gone up exponentially over the last year and a half. And the use of fake news and misinformation in the healthcare industry and in other industries. Next slide, please. Megatrend number 4, very briefly, it's all about the geopolitical tectonics of the world changing, both internally in many countries. There's been a long study done of the last couple of decades showing how democracy has declined in most countries to a certain extent, and in other countries more dramatically. And there's also the breakdown of international governance. And I don't need to speak more to this, but it's another piece of the tectonic change that is impulsing change, and also all of the challenges that we have. For example, at COP26, getting people to agree on things has become more difficult because of these geopolitical tectonic changes. Next slide, please. And then the last megatrend is the rise of stakeholder capitalism. To me, this is really important, and it completely dovetails with what we're talking about here, from ESG, stakeholders, technology, the rise of regulations, the explosion of investment in ESG funds, bonds, equity, and the need to really understand who your stakeholders are beyond your shareholders. Next slide, please. And the SDGs really were sort of a part of the beginning of this when they were passed in 2015 as goals for 2030. And a lot of businesses and society and government have united around getting some of these things done. Next slide, please. And the rise of greenwashing, of course, is also, you can see this interesting headline, an AI, artificial intelligence analysis of 800 companies finds that greenwashing is rampant. So as we have a bigger focus on ESG and T issues, we're also using technology to analyze a lot of this stuff. It's allowed, for example, this analysis to show that 800 companies, that many of these 800 companies were basically just greenwashing about how much they do environmental, social, or governance issues. And so there's a real coming together of these mega trends to sort of create this enormous amount of risk and enormous amount of opportunity. Next slide, please. And here you see just an explosion of the ESG ecosystem. You have corporate rating agencies, credit rating agencies, specialist data providers, disclosure standards, which are evolving, sustainability frameworks, scorecards. It is a tsunami of things going on. This will settle down eventually, but it is happening and it's not turning back. And that's why I consider this megatrend the most important one for us right now to talk about as we talk about ESG plus technology. Next slide, please. Here are now my last 2 or 3 slides where I'm just going to give you a very quick model of what I consider a resilient organization that is focused and able to achieve sustainability, innovation, and resilience. Resilience being a really important part of the picture. And it's about creating what I'm calling regenerative stakeholder capitalism. You want to have the right kind of leadership and the right kind of culture in those organizations. And you can access this slide deck and access these articles if you like after this presentation. Next slide, please. Know your stakeholders. This is extraordinarily important. It's not just about the shareholders and the owners anymore. It's about your employees. It's about your customers. It's about your communities. It's about your third-party vendors and others. You need to understand what their issues, risks, and opportunities are, and then build a more resilient internal organization as a result. In the next slide, you will see that as part of this leadership, culture, knowing your stakeholders, you also have to construct an integrated ESG+T, issues, risks, and opportunities value chain, where you're not only spotting your important issues, but you also understand how they can become risks and how you can mitigate those risks, how they can become reputation risks, how those issues can also become opportunities, and how you need to prepare for crisis relating to those risks and opportunities. And the result, if you have this well organized, is that you will either prevent value destruction or have value destruction if you're not doing this properly, value protection, value creation, and ultimately, if you do this really well, innovation. Next slide, please. In this next slide, you will see that all of this has to be integrated into your organizational strategy. Whether you're a business or a nonprofit or some other system, you want to have an organizational strategy that incorporates your environmental, your social, your governance, your technology, and of course, your financial and operational issues. And then always thinking about how the stakeholders will react, both the external ones and the internal ones. So having an integrated, holistic ESG+T strategy. Next slide, please. And here are the last 3 elements of what I consider to be a virtuous resilience life cycle. Having the proper performance metrics of both your people and your activities. Having a crisis readiness that is prepared for business continuity and other opportunities. And finally, if you have all of these things in place, these elements in place that I've just reviewed very, very quickly for you, which I develop in much greater detail elsewhere, the governance, the culture, the stakeholders, the risk intelligence, the strategy, the performance equilibrium, the crisis readiness, then you will also have that innovation ethos where you can do all of this boosting of innovation that we're talking about on this panel. So I think that covers my full slide. Let's go to the next deck. Just next slide, please, just so I can make sure I don't forget anything. Yeah, last slide. This is the one where I really believe it's not just me talking about this. It's some much more, heavy duty sources like McKinsey that are looking at how ESG concerns don't compromise returns. They actually boost returns. And so there's a study on one side, and then the resiliency piece is on the other. Companies that were resilient at the outset of a downturn are more prepared to deal with the downturn and are better off at the end. So thank you very much. I turn it back to the panel, to Maria, and look forward to hearing the remarks of my other co-panelists and any questions you might have. Thank you. You can take that down. Thank you.
I'm afraid she has her mic off. We cannot hear her.
Oh.
Waiting for some sound from the moderator. Hello. I'd like to thank Andrea very much for her words. Absolutely, this holistic vision of the topic, integrating all the parts and stakeholders is very important. From the thinking of Edgar Morin, he says we are dust in the universe. Everything is interconnected. And I would now like to hand over to Bruno Pina. He is the Chief Innovation Officer from Distrito, and he's going to share with us his thinking and bring his ideas on this topic. Bruno, welcome. I'm afraid we cannot hear him. Bruno, if you like, we can hand over to Danielle while you check your audio, okay? So to proceed with our panel, let's listen to Danielle Carocha. Danielle Carocha is head of research, ESG, and digital innovation at PANGEIA, and he's going to share with us his ideas, his thoughts. And Danielle, welcome. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yes. I think everybody can hear me. Well, now it's afternoon. It's past noon in Brasilia time. I thank you all very much, panelists. And I thank everyone from FIS. It's a great pleasure to share our vision from PANGEIA and the path that we're trailing to build the planet we wish, that we want. And we understand that we can and should benefit from the power of the media, the ecosystems, universities, academia, especially of technology. Just to go over the idea of PANGEIA conceptually, PANGEIA, the proposal is of a new modus operandi. So updating with our human operating system and the way we regenerate things for the planet. In practice, we're basically, since 2016, we've been a purpose of sustainable businesses, organization based on social, economic, environmental development. Currently, labeled ESG. Let me tell you how we're going to work on this new journey of planet Earth. Just to set the context, we have been speeding up implementing digital transformation of small producers from indigenous tribes in the northern of the country to Italian immigrants in southern Brazil, from them to the end consumer, bringing products from those regions that suffer with several issues, logistics problems, internet connection, etc. And we bring these products, the produce, to conscious consumption in São Paulo and other major cities in Brazil. And obviously, the idea is for us to end the intermediaries that are very much part of this economic power that we have in Brazil. But in the past year, 2020, during the pandemic, it became very clear that we needed to move beyond that. In the past 100 years, life expectancy more than doubled. Child mortality has been greatly reduced, but we know that this exponential growth has been very fast, that the possibility came with and Andrea and Maria actually mentioned that. So we understand that these trends for the forthcoming year, as Andrea well mentioned, we understand that just as it happened in the past millennium with the Spanish flu that sped up the Industrial Revolution. And we know that post-pandemic, we are actually forging a new revolution and actually using or tapping into ESG. So PANGEIA realized that we needed to speed up the acceleration, creating bridges between the initiatives of environmental impact, they exist, and maximizing all these ecosystems to promote this true transformation. Bruno from District has been with us in this journey, and Andrea himself. We understand that this new economy requires concrete actions from individuals and corporations to the benefit of conscious governance and the environment and the climate. We understand healthcare is crucial for us to speed up ESG and then lato and strict sense. Large corporations are with us from Brazil and overseas, and the idea is to together individuals and corporations use maximal the network power so that we can empower the communities and impact actions that are both environmental and social. And our idea is to escalate abroad and to Latin America and overseas. And then we have the new PANGEIA and the new impact of ESG. First, open source platform of ESG in Brazil and the planet, aiming at accelerating material actions of ESG, bringing all the errors and successes that we learned, environmental impact companies that are making transformation. So we have startups and indigenous tribes, leaders, craftsmen, philosophers, scientists to think together and facilitate these concrete actions. So our action is clear, is to orchestrate ESG actions, integrating people from various industries and tribes, as Maria said, to accelerate ESG. So we have hundreds of challenges in ESG and research we have from KPMG, one of the great partners. 4 great challenges have been made very clear, and it was made very clear by Andrea in her presentation. First of all was greenwashing. People actually have this greenwashing as one of their brands. We want to help companies to identify the causes that are real or not, and those that are not real, we have to offer opportunities for them to invest in real actions, fighting against greenwashing. The other point, where to invest. Many companies want to actually invest in real actions. And then we have Distrito with us and our hubs of networking of impact actions, where we're going to provide opportunities for companies and individuals through crowdfunding to make impact investment with social environmental impact in Brazil. Third point is a confused consumer. We've identified that has been an increase, great increase of words. What is a vegan product, ecological product, etc., or environmentally friendly? As I'm going to say later, we're going to enable a platform of knowledge and information so that people like us can tell the difference between products. What is an environmental impact and social impact, and understand about that. And lastly, as Maria mentioned, social media has great power today, and our goal, as you mentioned, is to bring along with our digital influencers to bring as much power as possible from the social media so that we generate a virtuous circle of positive environmental, social, positive action so that we can increasingly have more companies, more individuals taking part of this movement with us. Then basically, for us to materialize this, we developed a platform we're going to launch shortly. I'm going to give you the website for you to register. We're going to have 3 major fronts to face the 4 challenges. One is knowledge platform. We're going to have market experts to talk a lot about the philosophy engaging ethics and sustainability, why ESG starts with the human being. Second platform is impact transformation. We're going to have a series of pipelines of impact projects, social, environmental, for people and for individuals and companies. And the last one for products. And then if you have questions and get some education and information on products, Facebook along with that is with us in this journey is everything we have in terms of awareness raises and impact transformation. We're going to actually do things backward to empower people so that they can take part of this journey with us. Since we know that every revolution starts with human beings, we have an extraordinary group of people. Andrea here with us, just as she was Eduardo Distrito, they are with us actually counseling our ecosystem. And we're going to start right now. I usually say that we're made up by small companies, large companies, executives, artists and craftsmen and causes. My invitation to all of you is that you should access our website, Revolution ESG.eco, and to register our PANGEIA.eco, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn, and you should be part of it, of our network. We know that the problem is quite complex to be resolved, but our contribution is to gather people aligned with the same vision of doing good, and ESG is here to strengthen this cause. We see a lot of leaders increasingly engaged in doing it, and our role is to provide the how. So come be part of us, of the ESG revolution ecosystem with us. And I leave this invitation to all of you, and we offline later. It is a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much, Maria. Hand over back to you. Thank you, Danielle. As Danielle has put it, this world that is hyper-connected, understanding our ecosystem is very important, and the impact organizations are key elements, and NGOs, although Andrea mentioned that they lack a bit of management, it is part of the learning curve and maturity as well. But it is a key part of the ecosystem. When we think about this business ecosystem, there is no business ecosystem where the company is isolated from what happens in its surrounding, in its territory. So the impact organizations are, I always say that, the sort of utmost or most active part of society. So it's a key part that should be integrated in the ecosystem. And I combined Danielle's talk to Bruno's talk. Then Bruno, let me introduce you again. Bruno, he is head Chief Innovation Officer of Distrito. Welcome. And we wish to listen to Distrito's experience with sustainability. I'm radical. ESG to me is an indicator, or is a dictator, actually. So to me, an importance of all these in open innovation with business systems that I think that, because I know this is what the game district plays. Welcome, Bruno. We cannot hear you. Now, can you hear? Yes, now, yes. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, such a nice conversation. I'm innovation chief officer at Distrito. Our game is of connection. It's an open innovation platform to allow the connection between innovative hearts and ecosystem. It goes through part of it is not fancy, not just seeking technology by itself to resolve business problems. Innovation is also present in the SDGs. Through innovation, we can actually provide sustainability to the country and deliver a better world. We have had a program of strong activism. We look at practices, for example, of gender equality. We had a program for startups founded by women. Now we're moving towards an acceleration program for startups founded by Black people. We have a program that we've designed, actually an event we had with PANGEIA, looking at all the scenario of ESG, discussing and gathering leadership to talk about the topic in Brazil. It's a scenario that now has become perhaps even more important with the combination of the three letters. But it's something that has been happening for a long time when we talk about sustainability in companies. Perhaps it wasn't so sexy to discuss these topics as it is today, but it is an absurd market. You know, around the world, we have $31 trillion invested in assets under this management. And this has been growing year after year. This year for 2020, growth of more than 100%. It's a scenario we have to look carefully, obviously, how to make it effective and what indicators we're going to use to measure things. Brazil, we have several specialized investment funds in ESG practices, which is quite important for the development of the scenario. If we consider today the number of startups we have today in ESG, what Distrito makes the analysis on our platform, we're talking about approximately 900 startups today, specialized, let's say, in some of the three fronts of ESG. So when we add the total of investments in Brazil in ESG, we're on average is $1.4 billion in investments, and $1.4 billion, $900 million in the past 2 years. Another practice that has been growing a lot is actually intensifying companies putting ESG as a strategic practice and turning their strategies of M&A to also consider ESG. We have to look at ESG on our side as an open innovation platform. We want to connect organizations and facilitate and speed up their transformation through open communication. Our work with platforms is to be able to reduce attrition and of implementing a 2030 agenda. Many companies are focused on their 2030 agenda. How do I get the SDGs to work on the sustainability agenda? How can we speed that up so to turn what is H3 into H1? So something that is, you know, way ahead to be here. So we provide that through partnerships. In my mind, I look at what we have to do as a company connected to the ecosystem. When we talk about this, how do we look? I like the ESG topic. I loved what Andrea mentioned. So AI technology, and you put them in the favor of human development, or the empowerment rather of the human beings in its cognitive abilities, turning us human and leave technological manual apart for a machine. I'd say that this is an excellent potential for us to recover, so to speak, our origin. This to us, this is the best reading that we could have for this time. Is it romantic to talk about this? Obviously, yes. To, you know, to tell the traditional world, the executive commercial world, the space is a space that needs to have you have to be very careful when you put it. It's a space where you're demanding for results and sales. So when we put this this panel, perhaps, sort of lighting light bulb in the minds of the C-suite, that this has to be part of their strategic development. The numbers that Andrea shared from McKinsey is very interesting. It's not this or that. Through ESG practices, you leverage your business and you attain new results. And we understand as a district, as a person, you do this connecting the very ends. When I talk about startups geared to ESG, I'm talking about clean techs and clean water and energy, social impact, circular economy, transparency in the management and governance practices, specific modernity. There are so many topics that if we look at the strategic agendas of the companies, how relevant this is. And the question is, how can this become more easier and faster to be implemented? If we look at Brazilians' minds, you can have ESG startups in the financial sector with microcredit, giving access to people for people to invest and to start a new company. Our view is that sustainability, ESG, is an integral part of the growth strategy of companies. Companies that do not have this well designed, if they don't have a design, they will. This has become a premise, not only of sustainability officers. This is in the board. They're investing in debentures. If they do not attain their KPIs, they're going to lose money with that. So this is a call upon everyone I can make, wrapping up, that we have to combine more players in the ecosystem. We must have activisms, and we have been able to make money along with sustainable practices. This is how we're going to move forward. So thank you very much for this chat. This is a topic I get very excited about. We at Distrito are constantly connected to this ecosystem. It's a topic we discuss, debate constantly, because innovation is also transformation of people, and we are connected with that.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Wonderful. I'm just so glad you talked about innovation, transforming people, because this is something that we really believe. We believe transformation gets inside out. Now, going to the questions, I would like to go back and ask Andrea to answer it, because whenever we talk about technology, technology may be scary. Not me, because I just live by technology and I've always used it. But whenever we speak about technology, some people get afraid and say, wow, no, too much. But I constantly work with companies and I say, well, there was fire. We've learned how to write, then we've learned how to navigate, and now it's technology. It is digital technology. That's how we move ahead in humankind. So the question that I always ask executives, revolution takes place when we adopt new technologies or when society adopts new behaviors and change mindsets? When do changes really happen? Andrea?
Wow, what a thoughtful question. Thank you so much for that. I would say that you're absolutely right that as innovations come in and they're revolutionary, everybody panics, or a lot of people panic. And I think the answer is we have to embrace change, but we have to give change some guardrails, some governance, understand how they impact people, assets, communities. And if we're not thoughtful at the inception of these innovations, if we don't have what I think Maria mentioned earlier at the beginning of this, these interdisciplinary teams that are actually putting their eyes on the innovation to understand what the implications might be, being a little bit futuristic about, okay, so this happens today, but what happens tomorrow and the day after? And I think some of the dangers are that we don't think about those things early on, and we don't put in some mechanisms to keep an eye on it. So, people talk about out of control machine learning, or, the creation of robot killers and things like that. Well, those things can happen if you don't have the right people putting their eyes on and creating the guardrails early on, or if you have the wrong people deploying those technologies. And that is the one of the big paradoxes of our time is technology in and of itself is good. It's the people behind them and the using of that technology that can go off the rails in terms of, there was a drone attack on the Iraqi prime minister the other day. He almost was killed. The drone itself isn't bad. It's the people behind the drone who were trying to assassinate someone. So I think we as humans have to be super thoughtful in a way that we've never really been before, because the technology that's happening today is exponentially different from, fire and power and, plumbing and things like that. It can really, really create terrible damage, but also incredible positivity in the world.
Thank you, Andrea. You are absolutely right. Technology and people may get frightened. I remember I had an experience, someone from the farm that my father has, was someone from that, and we went to a plant, and he saw the nice plant and said, "Do you work there?" I said, "Yes, it's technology." So everything has a good side and a bad side in life. And I think that we need, as you said, guardrails, we need controls created by us, by the society. And this is why governance is so important. And this is going also to take us to our destination. How far do we want to go? And what are the boundaries to getting there? Now, Bruno, bringing it together to the ecosystem to revolutionize the network, the logics of network. I love networks myself. So networks as social players, really. And whenever we talk about networks, we are talking about sustainability. And then I want to hear Andrea talking about network as well. When we talk about interconnectivity and sustainability, we are bringing together humans and non-humans by using sensors. We can hear the forest, the oceans, the ecosystem. We don't have to go to the Amazon to know that it's on fire. The sensors by satellite show that to us. So, and by analyzing sustainability, we see a huge potential, because if all players, human and non-human players, are connected as part of a network, we can do so much. And I would like to hear from Distrito. How are you thinking about it, Bruno? Because I constantly think about that. Well, I don't know whether it's good or whether it's extremely tiring for all of us. But anyway, I fully agree. If we can just go beyond my organization, we've said that we've always used our resources to business, regardless of what business it is. I believe there is a gap between resources which are not readily available because technology is in between that, and we don't have enough knowledge of technology. So people cannot really reach the transformation, cannot understand the transformation that's going on. So resources that are driving humanity and business to another level are technology-based resources. But unfortunately, this is not part of everyone's knowledge, right? Because we have very limited education on technology. And we know how to use, but it doesn't mean we easily adapt. Using a smartphone is one thing, but using your smartphone as a service provider, taking you the extra mile is something different. And I think that if we have a clear journey mapped as part of networks, then technology will be part of that. The journey is human, it's a human journey, and it can be mapped and include technology. I think we've been doing it for a while, but what is really digital inclusion? It is really having any business operate within the technology. And if we don't change the mindset, if we don't change our vision about it, we are not going to succeed. I know a few companies, and I work with some companies with top executives, and we can see them concerned about delivering the KPI that is going to measure their own results. When we decide to discuss social impact and sustainability, it still seems to be kind of, "Ooh, really? It's not really a fact." It just sounds a bit too theoretical, right? So, okay, we can know what's going on in the Amazon, fine. But in my opinion, we still have to have a better translation of the needs we have as a society, as a population. Technology is there, but we haven't been able to have it fully implemented and active yet. PANGEIA can do that. It has technology. So I think we still have an opportunity for companies to understand what else can be done. I think companies still have to bring sustainability into their strategy, in addition to go for zero carbon emissions or plant trees, but there's just so much more to do. Andrea, your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more with Bruno. I think the real place where the rubber meets the road for companies especially is not ignoring these issues anymore. A lot of companies have either ignored them, not taken them into account, even not understood them, and not understood how those issues affect positive or negative feelings from their stakeholders, whether they're their own employees, whether they're customers or the communities that they work in. If companies don't take into account the environmental, the social, the governance, and the technological issues that are important to their business plan, and then incorporate that into their strategic planning, they are missing out on value creation. I like to say they're leaving money on the table. So it's not the only reason for doing these things, because we know that we're living in a very high intensity emergency climate and other kinds of issues world. And so I think there's reasons for doing it beyond money. In fact, the reasons are even bigger than the money reasons. But because business is made to be profitable, I think it's important for them to understand that if they don't incorporate the ESG and technology issues into their strategic planning, they will actually lose out. They will actually not last, or they will muddle through, or they won't survive the next pandemic. And so I think this is a wake-up call, this whole year and a half that we've all lived collectively through this, plus the climate issue, which is going to be with us for decades. These are rallying reasons for us to be more conscientious and profitable at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for this vision. I would like now to ask Daniel, probably one of our last answers. Well, we have 2 minutes, Daniel, to answer. No pressure. Companies have to create value. And I always like to tease people about that. In a connected world, are we creating value, integrating value? Do we want to create value? Do we want to create impact? Such a good question, Maria. If I can make a comment based on what Bruno and Andrea have said, which were amazing, of course, in their answers, and this is why the ESG revolution that we are experiencing has Distrito as a key portion of it, really bringing startups, bringing companies on board. So PANGEIA brings the needs of all the different players. So we are going to be in 60 cities in the Amazon. So we are going to bring this physical demands connected through digital, and Distrito is going to enable that. We are going to bring everyone together and bringing on board all the understanding and the vision that Andrea shared with us. I think both matters. Especially in Brazil, where there is a portion of the population which still we don't see as potentially consumers of companies. They are not part of the GDP yet. But this is not philanthropy, not at all. By making minor adjustments of small and mid-sized grower, for example, we can sustain a new economy, which is going to impact the companies that are part of the ecosystem. And I agree with Andrea, this conscious consumption has been essential. We have run a survey recently, and the conscious consumption, which used to be just at the upper income levels, now everyone is concerned about that. Is there slavery work? Are they cutting trees? So everyone has been thinking about that. This mindset change, even before the physical change, is a reality, is coming more and more into play. And this is why it's changing stakeholders and leaders so that we can do the right thing. Simply it. And how can we do it? Let's bring together the ecosystem of the academy, startups, open innovation, companies, everyone, so that we can think together about our future. Thank you, Daniel. It is an intriguing topic, really issues that have been revolutionizing our practice, especially because of the pandemic. You see, this time has really shown us that the future is today, and businesses have to understand that. I would like to thank Andrea. I'd like to thank Bruno and Daniel. I'm sure we could be on and on here talking and chatting, but unfortunately we were just given on 1 hour and 5 minutes. It's been an excellent conversation. Thank you very much. Now you know where to find them. So thank you all very much. And please feel free to say goodbye now. Thank you.
Obrigada.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.